good with babies.
I have a few named after me.
Welcome to Chautauqua People. My guest today is Jeanne Wiebenga, a native of the Netherlands who grew up there, and she's a longtime local resident. She received her medical training in the Netherlands, earned a Master of Public Health from Harvard, and completed a residency in OBGYN from the program in Buffalo. She's board certified. She's practiced in numerous locations worldwide: Ghana, Malawi, Australia, the American Indian Health Service, with postings in Arizona and Alaska. Many local residents will remember her from her time at WCA Hospital in Jamestown, where she was part of a local OBGYN group. And also many viewers have seen her photographs. She currently has an exhibition hanging in the Lakewood Public Library. I'm correct?
I was just close today.
Oh, just close today, but it'll come back, and we'll talk more about her photography later. Now, Jeanne, how did you spend a great deal of time practicing in Africa earlier in your career? What took you there?
I had a sense of adventure, was inherited, I would say, from my grandparents. But when I graduated from medical school, I really, really wanted to go and see the world. And the Dutch government had a program that sent young physicians, before they even did a residency, around the world, mostly Africa, some to South America. And I had a choice of where I wanted to go. And by serendipity, I ended up in Ghana.
And that just worked out, didn't it?
Worked out very, very well.
Now, subsequently you practiced in the United States. What differences have you observed in patients from these two countries, these two regions?
Well, first of all, comparing Africa to the United States is a matter of there are very few physicians, 1 in 100,000 for a specialist in most African countries, compared to here, where every woman who needs or wants to have her OBGYN care can find a physician and be taken care of. So there is a terrible shortage of medical staff, and what I'm talking about is 45 years ago, and that has greatly improved. Poverty, lack of education, there's just a general lack of health care, but that is slowly improving. Mm-hmm. And I loved working in Africa. It was a matter of the patients came to the hospital, usually when they were in dire straits. There was very few prenatal care, for example, in my particular specialty, mm-hmm. although that has greatly improved. And so patients who came to the hospital really needed to be seen. There was a lot of complications of childbirth, obstructed labor, bleeding, maternal mortality was very high, infant mortality was very high. But again, over the last 2 generations, I would say 45, 50 years, that has greatly improved in most African countries, or Latin America or Southeast Asia as well. But it's always going to be, there's always going to be a great gap in care available to people in Africa or underdeveloped countries compared to the United States.
Now, many of these countries have established medical schools, have they not?
Many have established medical schools. For example, when I went to Ghana, there was no medical school. And the first medical school started to deliver their medical students. They actually worked in our hospital. Now they have specialty training, and they are actually some of the best in the world that get their education there. And unfortunately, there's a big brain drain, and many physicians end up leaving the country because the standard of living, of course, in particularly the United Kingdom and the United States, is so much higher.
And so income is higher, is
yeah.
Tendency to leave.
Tendency to leave, yeah.
Yeah.
Opportunities for advancement of career.
Right. I saw a documentary on establishment of a medical school in Namibia, and I could talk with you for an hour or two about that. If we were having dinner together.
I know Namibia not from my medical career, but from safaris.
Right. Now, and you understand we have family interest in that.
Yes.
Over dinner, we'll have to sometimes talk about that. Now, OBGYN is a very large field. covers a broad age range. Could you talk about what the needs were between younger patients and older patients, and how that varied?
Well, are you talking about obstetrics or gynecology?
Yes.
Well,
Probably gynecology would be.
yeah, well, I personally had a large practice of elderly patients, I would say 60 and up, which I just loved. And while I was practicing here for 10 years in Jamestown, I did obstetrics, but my practice was really focused on the elderly patients. And Jamestown has a large population of younger patients who are getting pregnant, probably younger than many other regions. It's probably getting better now with there's an increase in facilities available, and the medical care is probably perhaps a little better. We have more physicians now than we had maybe 20 years ago. And I don't know the current situation. I would think patients have become a little bit older when they got pregnant than they were maybe 20 years ago. Better education.
Yeah, and so with a somewhat older maternal situation, does that make for better care, or?
Well, the older women in general who get pregnant have already established a career.
Got it.
They are perhaps in a better financial situation, so they will be able to better take care of themselves too. And I think the care they receive from the medical staff here doesn't matter if they're younger or older. But in general, women would be in a better situation to raise a child when they are a little older, when they have started a career and are in better financial situation.
Now, babies don't always arrive during normal business hours. Nerve of them. How do the group manage coverage throughout the 24-hour period of a day?
Well, the way we did it at the time, we were for a while only 3 in our practice. We each and we worked 4 days a week, and we took call the night before we were the day off, and we split the weekends evenly. Once every 3 weeks we were on weekend call, and it covered the entire territory. We did about, at the time, maybe 300-400 deliveries a month. It might be more now.
How many deliveries a month?
Maybe 300.
Wow. 10 a day?
No, for the entire group.
Okay, for the entire group. So that's 10 a day for the group.
Yeah.
Busy.
Maybe I am exaggerating a little bit. It varied. You know, there were more in certain times of the year, but maybe between 5 and 10 a month, a day.
That's a lot, isn't it? Now, how many babies do you figure you've delivered during your career?
You know, I've never kept track of it, but it must be between 5,000 and 7,000, I would think.
Goodness.
Yeah.
Goodness. Now, throughout the community here, many know you as a tennis player, a pickleball player, and a photographer.
And a golfer.
And a golfer. And here we are dressed in a golf shirt. And what led you to become such a skillful person, sports and photography and medicine?
I have always had an athletic ability, and I've loved sports throughout my school years, and I've done sports for my entire life. And once I came to the United States, I lived across the street from a 36-hole golf course.
Oh.
So I thought, well, let me give it a go, and I became very enamored with the sport. And I picked up tennis after I hadn't played for 30 or 40 years. 3 years ago, and I love it.
Goodness. And you're still pickleball.
Yeah, that's new. I started that 5 years ago, and I play that here in winter.
Right. And then back toward the grounds during the summer months.
Yeah, well, in the summer I play tennis and golf.
Okay.
Pickleball we have just a few new pickleball courts in Chautauqua.
Okay. Now, let's switch gears here. What led you to become a photographer?
I have been interested in photography from a very early age, and again, that's a little bit some genetic predisposition. My grandmother, my paternal grandmother, was a war photographer in her teenage and early 20s years in South Africa. She photographed the Boer War on the Dutch side.
Right.
And her photography, it's not very well known, but her photography is still in the archives of Pretoria in South Africa.
Really?
And I have seen some of those photographs, but I will probably have to make a trip to South Africa. I've been there once, but again, and see if I can find the rest of them, because I have a feeling there are many, many hundreds of them from like 110, 120 years ago.
Right. So what kind
Yeah.
of equipment was she using then?
She probably was using glass plates. I know
Really?
there were some glass plates, and I have seen one pictures of a camera on a tripod where she's wearing a big dark
A hood kind of thing?
hood over her camera. But that's just about all I know about it. That's all that was available in those years.
So we want good reason to go back and do a little digging, isn't it?
Yes, it is. That would really be a reason to go back. I know she was trained by one of the famous photographers in the Netherlands at the time.
Mm-hmm.
His name was Joris Evans, and of course he's long gone too.
Yeah.
And she did that as a very young girl. She just, when she was not even 20, she took a ship and went from the Netherlands to South Africa
Wow.
to visit an uncle, and she stayed there and found and married my grandfather.
Wow. Now I wonder how the parents felt about their daughter shipping off.
Yeah, you know, those are questions we should have asked our parents.
Yeah.
We never did. And
Just-
hopefully my father would have asked his mother, but
Yeah.
they ended up living in Indonesia, in the Dutch Indies after that.
In Indonesia?
Was then the Dutch Indies,
Yeah.
it's now Indonesia.
Do you know what island they were in? Java.
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 Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And that's it. So we go back and look about the sometime go back and look at the historical stuff in South Africa.
Yeah.
You had to come back to the table here and share what you found.
I do need to find out a lot more. There's very, very little information. We have a very small family, and the files are few.
Yeah. Now, you have a reputation for doing some really excellent photography on nature, particularly the birds. And how did this become an area of interest?
Well, if you're talking about the ospreys, that was totally an incident, coincidental. But I have had interest in nature photography, particularly in Africa. I've been on many, many safaris in a variety of African countries. So, and then I had the very good fortune of meeting a famous Dutch National Geographic photographer. His name is Frans Lanting. And I've been on multiple safaris with him, and I've learned more from him than I've learned from any books or just teaching me about light, composition, what's your story going to be. He has had a phenomenal impact on my life, and I've been with him to Botswana, Namibia, the Arctic, Antarctica, and in fact in January I am going with him again to Antarctica.
Goodness.
I have just this attraction for Antarctica that I will never give up.
And what kind of animals did you photograph in some of those places?
Well, on safaris, of course, the big five: the elephants, the lions, the leopards, the rhinos, the zebras, and the giraffes. That were still abundant. We
Right.
don't know for how much longer.
Right.
Also birds. There were lots of great variety of birds. But those are sort of the main animals that is unbelievable when you first get to see them. It's you can hardly believe your eyes when you see a herd of elephants crossing the savannah. It's just these moments stay with you forever.
They do.
And
And are elephants endangered as a species?
very much, yes. There all are. The lions, even the hippos and the rhinos in particular, the numbers are decreasing with astounding numbers. We're probably down to 30% of the original numbers from 50 or 75 years ago.
Really? What's the source of loss?
Probably, no, it's well, climate change is the obvious one, but that's probably not the biggest one. The breaking up of the habitats,
Okay.
there's very little there's this constant conflict between humans and animals. The population increase in Africa has been so dramatic that much of the land that the animals could roam free has been broken up in smaller parcels, and they can't find food, and it's just their numbers have been decreasing because of that, as well as, of course, poaching and hunting. Not now anymore. Well, they're still being hunted, but probably 100 years ago it was much more severe than it is now.
That's changed. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about some of your local photography, and then let's take a look at some pictures.
Yeah, I decided when you asked me to bring some photos, not to do a variety of pictures from around the world, but stick to this amazing osprey story.
Right, tell us about it.
It developed during COVID in 2000. I am on the board of the Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy, and they have a preserve. It's called the Loomis Goose Creek Preserve. It's just about 12 miles from Chautauqua, 17 miles from Mayville, on the left side of the road. And in 2015, the watershed decided to put up an osprey pole. And some volunteers and generous donors built it, but they were very frustrated because for 5 years nobody showed up. The nest stood empty. And then, and I didn't know what ospreys were. I really didn't know. I could not differentiate an osprey from an eagle. But then 5 years ago, all of a sudden, we saw a couple of birds, and we saw them bringing in sticks. And then they settled. They formed a couple. There was some mating activity going on, and we couldn't see in the nest, of course. I could only see under the nest. It was during COVID. We were all stopped in our tracks. It was in the spring of COVID. There was no traffic. People didn't go to work. It was very, very quiet on the road. Nobody went to go shopping in Lakewood. And so that's probably why they settled there. And since I had some extra time, I decided to go and document this. And so I saw these photos, these birds. Couldn't see that there were eggs. We assumed there were eggs. We couldn't see that there were hatchlings until all of a sudden in August there was a fully grown chick. And it looked so different from the parents that even I recognized it. And I said, oh my God, that's not one of the parents. Because I had learned over time what the parents looked like. They are very distinguished looking, as we can see on the photos. And that was such a joy, and that was the first success. And then we realized that the birds would leave after they had raised this chick. First the mother leaves, and then the dad leaves. And finally the chick leaves end of September, that first year. And they go to South America, they go to the Amazon region. And the second year, because this was so amazing, and the photos that came out of that were interesting enough that I was invited by a CEO of the Roger Tory Peterson Institute to put up an exhibit the next year, which was 2021.
Great.
And by then, the Watershed Conservancy decided, well, this was a success for us. This was on our preserve. Let's put up a camera. And we put up a camera on the nest. I didn't. Twan Leenders and Associates, he's also very notorious, working for the Watershed Conservancy, put up a nest above the nest so we could peek in the nest and see follow what was actually happening. We could see the eggs. We could see the hatchlings. The eggs were produced in the end of April. The hatchlings, the chicks, was only one, came out in June, and it fledged in August. So meaning it took 8 weeks from being born to being ready to fly off the nest, basically be an adult.
Great.
And that cycle repeated again last year, 2022, same this year, 2023. The first 3 years we had one chick on the nest, and this year, to our utter amazement, we have 3.
Goodness.
And just last week, they all fledged, meaning they were big enough that they could fly on their own and leave the nest. And now they're hanging around, and we can see them in another month or so, and they will be big enough. They have learned how to fly. They have learned how to fish, and they disappear to South America too.
Goodness. So they're snowbirds in a different form.
Yes,
Can we see the pictures, Chuck?
absolutely.
What's
They're
this?
in chronological order. This was in the first year. This was in 2020. This was probably in May when the female osprey, and I can see that because she has a collar. She has a necklace. You cannot see it that well in this picture. You will see it later. They were bringing in sticks to build the nest. So the nest was a square platform, human-made square platform, and slowly they were filling it in, and now it's about this thick. The first year it was about this thick.
Really?
And they bring in sticks, and they bring it in from all over. They find them on the ground, they find them in the trees, and you see some grass and some leaves. And you see how thick it is there. But this was the first year, that same first year. Again, it's the female who brings in, you can see her collar there.
Yeah.
She brings in she fashions up the nest, and around that same time or shortly after that, there will be some eggs being produced in that nest, and you cannot see that here. These are all photos that I made during that first year when we didn't know what was going on in the nest.
Goodness.
So this was after I had for the first time seen the chick. You see that bird there that's with the orange eyes?
Yeah.
And it's a chick. And how do I know it's a chick? It has these scalloped feathers, and it has these bright orange eyes, but it's already fully grown. It's already fairly large. And the bird standing over it is its mother.
Really?
And what was so amazing about this picture, the enormous size of the wings. I was really amazed how big those
I
were.
was shocked to see them.
And this is the father actually. This is before the bird fledged. So before it flew off the nest, it was getting instructions from the dad on how to fly. That's what I assume, we anthropomorphize a lot. But the bird on the left has orange eyes. You cannot see it very well on this television image, but you see it on the real photograph. And it has these scalloped feathers. And the dad has sort of more yellow eyes. It does not have the necklace that the mother has. But it has speckles. That's how I know it's the father. And so it's giving instructions to the baby, and soon afterwards the baby will fly off the nest. But this is another interesting picture. This is the mother giving flying instructions to the chick. And how do I know it's the mother? You can see it has the collar, the necklace. And the chick is sitting on the perch. And I know from the history that a few days later it actually did fly off the nest for the first time.
Really?
And it was hanging around for another couple of weeks, and then mom disappeared. Mom decides, I've had enough. I've worked very hard to raise this chick, and you're done. You can live without me. And the mom leaves for South America, to the Amazon. We know that from, not because we don't know exactly, but that's what happens to most North American birds. They go there. And this is the fledgling. So this is the bird when it first flew off the nest. This is the chick. Again, the scalloped feathers. What is so typical for the osprey compared to the bald eagle is that black stripe that runs from the eye to the shoulders.
Wow, I see
And you
that.
can see that.
Very
And
clearly.
it also has very orange eyes that, again, you cannot see very well in this picture. Was that? No, there's another one. No, now we move 3 years down the line, and that's today.
Today?
This is today. I was there this morning. And what you see here is, these are all pictures not from the camera above the nest, but my own pictures. What I saw this morning, I was coming back from finishing my show, and I was stopping, and I saw this scene going on. I saw this bird fly in, and it's the mom, and see what she has in her talons. It's a huge piece of fish. And I saw her drop it in the nest, And then I took a picture of the nest. You could see all 3 fledglings sitting on the nest, and mom, there they are.
Mm-hmm.
And 1, 2, 3, and the one with the bigger one in the second of the right is the mom feeding the chick on her right. She only feeds one at a time. So
they have to wait in line.
yeah, they have to wait in line. And then there is one more where you can see there. So that's from the fish. The fish is in front of her feet. She takes a piece, she eats some herself, and the rest she gives to her chicks.
Goodness.
So these were from today. I quickly added them on, and I thought it was so magnificent. So
Now
much
tell
fun.
me what kind of equipment you use
Um,
to get they were spectacular pictures.
Yeah, well, except for the pictures today, I use a Canon. I used a Canon 5D Mark IV,
Okay.
which I have now replaced with a mirrorless camera. I think it's a Canon R6.
Mm-hmm.
And but today I used a Sony RX10 IV, which is sort of a medium range camera, but much easier to handle. So that's what I had today.
Yeah. And those are long lens on those?
That has a single lens, 24 to 600 millimeter.
Okay.
So that's long.
Big zoom then.
And the other one has a 100 to 400 millimeter zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's relatively easy
Yeah.
to go ahead. Now
Yeah.
you download those to cards and then,
Then, yeah, so
Hardware.
today I downloaded the card. I use a Lightroom,
mm-hmm.
Adobe Lightroom to edit photos.
Fantastic.
And I print them on, it's on aluminum.
Tell me about the aluminum. How did you come to that?
Well, when I first had my exhibit at Roger Tory Peterson Institute, it was actually Twan Leenders,
Okay.
whom you may know, who suggested that we go that route rather than having a print made and then having to use matting and framing, which is much more complicated.
Mm-hmm. And where do you get the aluminum?
It's a company in Minnesota,
Okay.
and I don't know if I should use the name or not, but
No, it doesn't matter.
yeah. And so I send my digital files, and they ship it usually within a week.
Wow. How big are these aluminum prints?
The biggest one that I have is 24 by 36, but the smallest one is 8 by 12, and you
Yeah.
can basically get any size in between.
And are they on thick aluminum backed up by something or?
Well, they're this thick
Okay.
aluminum, and you can have backing whatever you like. I have a thicker backing that's about 1 inch thick, and a thinner one that's about 1/4 inch. And it's very easy to hang them on the wall. And they're light, and they're weather resistant, and it's not easy to scratch them.
Yeah. So they're
Yeah.
great for an exhibit then.
They're great for an exhibit, yeah.
And this is far better than doing on paper and frames and matting and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah, it's so much easier.
Great. Now, we invited you to bring a friend. Who do you have here?
Well, it's funny, I have a couple of these. I bought these in the Netherlands, but
Okay.
this is a baby osprey, and you can see it because it has orange eyes, but it's mostly for the sound.
Okay. Goodness.
That is recorded by Audubon, so this is authentic.
Really?
It's it's Audubon has all kinds of animals that in these little sweet little things, and they sell them, and they have the original sound that is produced by the bird.
Does he have a name? Or she?
No,
We don't know if it's
I-
a he or she.
I
Can you
have
do it?
given the parents a name,
Yeah.
but I haven't given the chicks a name because we never know what sex they are
Okay.
until they come back 2 years later.
Aha. So that's a big point. The eggs are laid in the nest.
Mm-hmm.
They're kept warm. They hatch. Then they fly
Yeah.
away
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the summer,
Right.
and they go to South America. And they will come back in 2 years?
The young ones come
Yeah.
back in 2 years.
2 years. And do they? What do they do in
And-
that 2 years there?
And they hang out in the Amazon region in the forest, and they probably learn skills of flying and fishing and better, it's a big trip for them. It takes them a month to get there.
Wow.
And the mortality of those young ones is pretty high. It's over 40%.
Goodness.
And because they run into storms, it's their first time, they might run into predators, they don't really know how to survive. But those who survive will come back in 2 years and start their own nest. They come to the same region,
Really?
not to the same nest, and we collected quite a bit of revenue from the exhibits.
Right.
And Roger Tory Peterson very generously, the Institute very generously donated those to build more platforms.
Okay.
And other people donated, so we have more platforms. We have now 2 in the, one is near the rowing center, the rowing.
On Chautauqua here?
At the outlet
Right.
near the Chautauqua River. And we're going to get one in Chautauqua.
Goodness.
And we have money for that. We have a generous donor for that. And there's going to be one on the golf course.
Goodness.
So we have gone from almost no ospreys, because they were almost eliminated as a result of DDT. And thanks to Roger Tory Peterson and Rachel Carson,
Really?
who said, stop that DDT because it affected their calcium metabolism, and their eggs were very brittle, and they crushed the eggs, so the babies didn't survive.
So Rachel Carlson then called attention to the, let's develop this a bit. She called attention to DDT. And then what became a DDT? It was banned, or?
It was banned
Okay.
in the United States, not in many other parts of the world.
Yeah.
But here it was banned. It was used against malaria.
Mhm.
It was used in the army quite a bit, and you know, in agriculture, it was used as a pesticide, and that was replaced by newer ones. But
And so with the disappearance of DDT, next generation of eggs were stronger
they were stronger, yeah.
and better.
And so since then they've come back, but it's taken a long time to come back to this part of the country.
Right.
They have been back in the east side of the United States, some in the west, in the south. Our population is migratory. The population in Florida is sedentary. They stay there.
Really?
Yeah, because they have a much better climate year-round. So, and our birds fly over Florida and go further south to spend the winter there.
They don't stop and
Yeah.
turn into snowbirds or so. Bad pun,
Yeah.
but whatever. Now let me ask, and we are out of time, but this has been so much fun to see your pictures and learn about the model here. I love to ask this question at the end. Let's say a young Chautauquan comes to you, expresses an interest in having a career such as yours, physician, obviously a medical background of a specialty, and then some commitment to the fine arts and travel. What would you advise that young person?
They can go hand in hand. First of all, go and get that medical career, finish in medical school, do a specialty, and I did it all my life. I did it while I was working, and you know, there's so many. Now with the digital photography, it's so different from when we did film, as you well know, and the opportunities for workshops that you can take on weekends, on just take a week off and take a workshop. There are so many excellent photographers. I think the opportunities are far better and far more than they were in our days.
Right.
And so, yeah, be encouraged. It's an absolute. It's such a competitive field. So don't expect to. For those of us who have a dual career, don't expect to make a living of it easily.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work because it's such a competitive field. But for the enjoyment of it, yeah, take trips. Yeah, meet the great photographers of our time, and there are some really excellent magazines that advertise these trips, and they're all there for the taking.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. This has been fun, and you've got to come back after your next trip and share what you found.
It will be about Antarctica, yeah.
It'll be a different approach. Okay, thank you so very much.
Thank you, John.